Alrighty. Well, everybody, we want to thank you for joining us on Diversity Chats, where we bridge the gaps of diversity and destroy ignorance before it destroys another life. Today I have a guest with me. Yes, if you can, please share your name. Introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Julie.
Alrighty. Hi, Julie. And where are you from? Where do you reside? You don't have to be super specific, but just general.
I am from Bakersfield and currently living in Bakersfield.
Excellent. And which ethnic group do you identify as?
I'm Hispanic, so I was raised American, Mexican American, or like some people call it, I'm Chicana, so I wasn't raised knowing Spanish, but I learned it in high school and college.
Okay. How are you identified? Like, what's the identifier for Chicana? Is it Chicana? Chicana.
Yeah, Chicano or Chicana. What I learned is that basically your parents or your grandparents or even your great-grandparents, at some point, one of them is from Mexico, and you've taken on some of their culture. Maybe not everything, but you feel or you identify more with the Mexican culture than any other kind of culture. So there's a balance. I'm obviously American. I am fluent in English, but there's also some of my culture is definitely influenced by my parents and grandparents who were raised by Mexican parents. So my grandfather is from Mexico, and then my grandma is from Texas, but her parents are from Mexico. So that's kind of what it means.
Okay, cool. Thanks for, clarifying that for us. And what's your age, if you're willing to share?
Yeah, I'm 25.
It cut out. Okay, one more time. It cut out.
25.
There it is. I heard you this time. Okay, cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. And can you tell us something about you, something you're up to, hobbies, interests, special talent?
Yeah. So I like writing. Ever since I was a kid, I've loved writing. So eventually I started thinking about writing a book, and for the longest time I put it off. Because there's insecurities, and you think, well, you're not the greatest writer, so maybe you just don't write at all. But that's not the kind of perspective I want to have. I want to believe in myself more. So I started writing a book about a year and a half ago about my experience in Bolivia. So it's still work in progress, but I'm excited to finish it.
That's very cool. I certainly hope you do finish it. Do you know what it's going to look like as far as like how long it's going to be? Is it a chapter book or?
It is a chapter book. I would like to include photos, but the logistics of that is still unknown. We have to make sure that we're maintaining some privacy for the kids there at the orphanage that I was working at. So that's basically what it's about, my experience in Bolivia, but mostly about the kids that I worked with. So I'm hoping to be completely done. I'm in the second/third draft, but I'd like to be done before the end of the year.
Nice. Well, I have some writer friends if you ever want someone to like maybe help or read something for you or whatever, if you need it, if you want it. But that's really exciting.
We'll have to connect.
Very cool. Yeah. And so I met you recently. I just met you maybe like 3 weeks ago or something. And
something like that.
I enjoyed chatting with you. So thank you for joining me and trusting a stranger to say, hey, I want to chat with you on my diversity chat and like welcoming me into your reality and joining me in mine. So you did tell me a little bit about Bolivia when I was talking with you the other day. So can you tell us a little bit more about Bolivia? Maybe start with how did you end up there? What's up with that?
Okay, sounds good. Long story, so if you need to cut me short, go ahead and do that. But basically, I was studying at in the university. I was about to graduate last semester, exhausted, just wanted to be done. But at the same time, in the back of my mind, it was like, okay, what are you going to do next, Julie? I was studying at Whitworth University, a small Christian private university in Spokane, Washington. And I wasn't sure if I was going to over there, maybe move over to Seattle because I liked Seattle, maybe go back to California. You know, there were just so many questions I had. So one night I start praying and journaling and say, God, I don't know what to do. Show me the way. And within 2 weeks, I feel this inspiration to actually start looking for a job. And I say to myself, you know what, I would really like to do some sort of internship or volunteer work in the area that I would like to eventually work in. So I didn't want to just jump into something right away. I really wanted to get some experience. So that was my heart's desire. And I compiled a list of different organizations that worked with women and children in Spokane. I always have had this passion since I was 12 or 13 to work with women in domestic abuse or sex trafficking victims. So that's kind of where my focus was. But at the time, I was also looking at women that were immigrants, you know, that needed help, legal help, or just a place to stay. You know, there were just so many options in Spokane, and I was really excited until the following day. I got an email from the I think she was the secretary of the language department, and I was studying Spanish, so I received a lot of emails from her. And she just wrote something like, this professor thought you'd be interested in this teaching abroad program. And I don't like teaching. I prefer to allow other people to teach. I'd rather do something else. But I said to myself, well, why not? Let me just look at the link. So I opened it up and I found out that it was actually about a new orphanage that they were opening in South America. And I had heard of Bolivia once. South America has several countries, obviously, but Bolivia is kind of just surrounded by different countries. So we know about Ecuador, we know about Peru, we know about Chile. A lot of people don't know about Bolivia, though. And I knew about it from a linguistics class that I had taken. And I thought to myself, when I had heard about Bolivia the first time, I'd love to go there. But that's not happening. So when I got the email, I was like, whoa, this is Bolivia. And I'm getting invited to go. So I looked at the prices for the flights and I emailed the director and I was like, I really feel like God is calling me to go to this orphanage. And I don't really have that much experience with kids other than my siblings and cousins. But I'm really passionate about helping women, and I believe that I can be passionate about helping kids also. So my heart broke when I read that email, when I looked at the kids and the different men and women that were in the photos. I was just like, this is where I meant to go. So talked to my parents a few days later, and I said, hey, I met this lady who's the director of an orphanage that she's planning on opening up in a few months. And, you know, I'm graduating in May. She's opening up the orphanage in May. I want to go. And they were like, okay, you know, it was just, they knew that I was confident in this. And basically it came down to just being able to afford the flight, being able to afford being there, and I ended up going. And we didn't get our first kid, so I got there late June, and we didn't get our first child until November. So from June to November, I was just preparing myself, preparing my mind, my heart, meeting people, getting to know the culture. And I met my best friend there and her family. They became my family. So it was just all in God's timing. And yeah, that's my story.
Wow. So you went there as a teacher, doing something that you never thought you would do in a place that you wanted to go to, but never thought you'd be able to go to. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, well, and I didn't really consider myself a teacher. It was more, I was a teacher there, but I was also a caretaker. So imagine being a mom for 2 nights, 2 full days, and then not being a mom for 2 days again. So I had turns that I shared with other caretakers. We were called tias, or aunts in Spanish, and we were like their moms, the kids' moms. After those 2 days were over, we left, or like me, I was a volunteer, so I stayed in the house and I ate with the kids. You know, I fed them, I potty trained them. I did everything that you can think of with these kids that were younger than 5 years old.
Wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, I loved it.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing with us how you ended up in Bolivia. Would you ever encourage anybody else to go and do what you did, or is this something you wouldn't recommend?
I would totally recommend it. That's why I'm writing the book. It's partly to encourage young people like myself, maybe a little bit older, that still haven't found their calling or know that they have a calling to do something big. They just don't know where to start or how to start. And for me, it was just surrendering to God and allowing Him to let me see what His vision was for me. So yeah, definitely. Go do something like that. But at the same time, there are people that go with good intentions on missions trips, and they end up not having a good time. And I think that's partly because they go with intentions that are good, but not always the right intentions. They might be going there because they love kids. I had never been someone that said, "Oh, I love kids." But I knew that God wanted me there, so I knew that God would give me that love. And then don't go on a mission trip just because you like traveling. I love traveling, but the traveling experience in Bolivia was way different than my other traveling experiences. I was stuck in the same city for 1 whole year. So, you know, just make sure that you're going with the right mindset and the right heart. I've met people that go in and they're excited, but they do it all because of the excitement, not because of the calling. And so there's a huge difference, you know, wanting to do something because you're passionate about it, and then wanting to do something because God calls you to do it. You need both, you know. You can do it based off of passion, but it's not going to work out the same way as doing it with the calling and the passion.
I love that. That's balance. That's awesome. And what were the people like when you were there? What was it like the markets, or, you know, whenever you're exploring around the area? What was it like there?
Yeah, well, like many other countries other than the U.S., you need to hide your purse, hide your wallet, hide everything. Put it in the front, you know, put it on your chest or put it at your waist. Never carry a backpack. Put the backpack in the front. I've had 2 stolen while I was carrying them in my backpack, and I've had someone steal my wallet. And another person came after me and said, "Hey, that girl just took your wallet." So he retrieved it for me, but that was a God thing because I never would have guessed. So there's that, and there's lots of food on the streets. You don't really need a license to cook.
Okay.
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
You still there?
Is it a delay? Is it a delay a little bit? Go ahead. So you said they're cooking up. There's a lot of people that can cook on the street because they don't need a license. Oh, it froze again.
Yeah, there's a lot of food on the streets. You can fry things.
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
You're there now.
Yeah.
Okay. So you can buy anything, but probably don't buy anything for the first month or two because your body needs to acclimate to the foods. You might get a little bit of food poisoning, but there's really delicious food there. Super good.
Yeah.
French fries, their French fries are amazing. They have really big avocados, big peaches, everything's big there. And then I guess just American culture is totally different from many cultures in the world. And what I experienced is that, you go into a restaurant, you go into a store here in the States, and the customer's always right. You want a refund, you want an exchange, you get it. You got it, In Bolivia, it's not like that. You get what you get, and that's it. So the chicken's not cooked well, sorry. You just deal with it. That's the normal there, but there are, of course, other places that I didn't go to where, the restaurants are a little bit better kept and they're a little bit more wealthy, and they're like, oh, your chicken is raw? Okay, let me, go prepare you a new one, or let me give you a discount. Yeah. Not normal, but it's there somewhere, just not where I went.
Yeah. Wow. That's a good tip. Those are good tips. I would never have thought of that.
The people are great. Yeah. The people are great. There's obviously people that are drug addicts, and that's why they steal usually, because they need their drugs. And so they go and find tourists like myself. I'm light skinned, so I kind of stick out. And just the people, when you get to meet them, they're so sincere and genuine and loving. I mean, my best friend's family took me in, no problem. They had hardly any food to give me, but I'd share a bowl with my best friend, a bowl of food, or a bucket of water. We'd get a cup and scoop up the water together. And, they weren't afraid of germs. They weren't afraid of not having enough food, not having enough money to, feed me. And that for me was huge. Like, I'm American, I don't share my stuff, and you're sharing with me. So that really impacted my perspective on how people should treat each other.
Wow. They're sharing with you out of their lack, or not out of an abundance.
Yeah.
Wow. I love that. And when someone's willing to share from their own plate or their own bowl, that's love right there.
I know. I'll be here in the States with French fries, and my stepdad's like, hey, can I have a fry? And I'm like, no. And there they are with a bowl of rice, and they're like, here, have half. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's generosity on a whole nother level. That's awesome.
Yeah. Definitely.
And how long were you there? You said a year. Was it longer than a year, or just a year?
Yeah, a year and a month. So once the year was over, I actually went to my best friend's house, and I stayed there with her and her family for a month. Because I didn't know when I was going to be going back to Bolivia. I figured, hey, might as well make the best out of it. So I just hung out with them and used all of the funds that I had on food and traveling in the city and, buying souvenirs. But it was great. It was a great experience.
That's really cool. I love that. It sounds like Bolivia blessed you a lot. Like your obedience to God, it led to a lot of blessings through Bolivia, and that's awesome. What was it like moving back to the States? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but are you able to elaborate like the differences? You've been acclimated to Bolivia for a year and a month, and then you come back to us. What was that like?
Oh, it was hard. It was really, really difficult. I would say it took me about 6 months to finally start feeling comfortable back at home. Not to say that I had any lack, because I didn't. I was far from family and friends in Bolivia, so that was definitely the most difficult thing to process. And I had to encourage myself and say, hey, this is where God wants me now, back at home with my family. And I loved being with my family, but I was torn, a piece of my heart was now in another country, and I didn't know when I would be going back. So that was the number one issue that I had to deal with. Just a few other things was just like the food. The food was different. I was very tired coming back, and I think that had to do a little bit with the autoimmune disease that I was diagnosed with, but also depression. I was fighting depression and discouragement because I was like, okay, what now? Reverse culture shock is definitely real, and it can actually hit you a little bit harder than culture shock, I believe. That's the way it was for me. And I think the reason why it's so hard is because you try to explain to your family that you're not the same person as you were a year ago or however long you were away from home, and they're not going to understand because they see you the same. When you react differently, when you have different emotions, when you get upset about something that you didn't get upset about before, they might not understand. That's usually what happens, where I would get upset and they couldn't interpret why I was so upset, and I couldn't explain myself because for a year I had gotten used to being a certain way, and things were in a certain place, or things that we didn't do now we were doing here, or things were expected of me that weren't expected of me in Bolivia, and vice versa. So there was just a lot of differences that I had to overcome and deal with, and there's still some things that I've left as part of me now. I identify with certain things a little bit better in Bolivia than I do the American culture, if that makes any sense. So,
it's a thing.
Well, besides Spanish, I would say I learned to just be more believing. Just there, they don't have a lot of money. A lot of the people that I met, that I came into contact with, and for them it was just a way of life. It wasn't about the money, it was about the time that you spent with someone. It was about just getting through the day and not focusing on how much money you were making. That's a really hard mentality to grasp a hold of when you're exposed to the American culture all your life. It's now not about money. It's now about family. It's about just breathing, just living, just being in that moment. And I know that, there's songs about living in the moment now and all of that, but it's more positive there in Bolivia. And that's kind of what I've tried to take back with me here in the States, which has been difficult. I battle and wrestle with it a lot, but just allowing myself to say, hey, I'm not going to earn a lot of money doing, working here or working there, but that's not the most important thing. Money can be very useful. It is, but don't focus too much on that. And that money is just one example. You could be focused on status. You can be focused on popularity. You can be focused on so many different things, but eventually all of that will come in time, the way that it should come. And so my focus is more on just allowing God to provide those elements and put those people, those things, those objects into my life based off of my hard work, but also trusting in him. The people there, the Christians, have so much faith in God. They're like, I pray for a miracle, I pray for healing, because they can't afford medicine. They can't afford to go to the hospital. They can't afford to walk, or to take their taxi over to the hospital. So they have to just lay hands on their sick mom, on themselves, and believe that God is going to heal them. That's their medicine. And so taking that also with me and saying, you know what? The Bolivians had faith in God. Maybe if they had better hospitals, better transportation, and more money, they would be in the same position as a lot of American Christians. But they aren't. They don't have that stuff. So they have to rely on God to be their medicine, to be their prosperity, to be, all of that stuff. And that for me was super important to try to bring back to the States. And sometimes I struggle with it, but it's one thing that I do want to always be aware of.
I love that. I love it so much. That's so awesome. I'm definitely a person like a special faith, and I'd rather pray and see God do the miracle than depend on some man-made system or medication. Unless God says you got to do it. But yeah, I love to hear that our brothers and sisters in Christ in Bolivia are like, can't go anywhere. We're getting prayed for,
Yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, I understand it's unfortunate that they have the lack that they may have, but it's awesome to see that they're wealthy in faith. So that's really dope. Mm-hmm. I love that you brought that back. Well, I know we're coming up to our, let me check. Oh, we came up to our 30 minutes. I had a lot more questions for you, but I love your stories. I love the way you're sharing your experience with us today. Let me just confirm make sure I don't have anything else here. Just doing touch bases on. Let's see. Sorry.
No, you're good.
Oh, man. It's so much. Well, I know you're doing important work here in the States, so thank you for what you're doing. And the last question, I guess, is like, what are some of the injustices that you notice here in America, and how does it affect you? What's your response? My camera's flipping on me.
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, you can answer any part of that.
Gosh, well, right now, where I work at a pregnancy center. And so I would say one big injustice that I see is the lack of emotional support for women going through not just a pregnancy, but anything involving their sexual health. There's a lot of domestic abuse victims, and sometimes they don't realize it. Sometimes we don't realize it, and we don't know how to professionally, not just where I work, but in general, we don't know how to deal with that. And it's frightening, and it's a little bit frustrating, because I believe that we've evolved so much as a country, as people, and for us to not be able to support women and even men that have been victims of sex trafficking, of abuse, whether that's physical, verbal, sexual abuse, all of that, we should be able to help people cope with these things. And a lot of them are depressed, they're on medication to deal with what they've experienced in their childhood or in their teenage years. And that's not to say that they can't do that, I'm not, what do I want to say? They can take the medication if they want, but what about the emotional support? Because the medicine isn't going to support them emotionally. There should be more churches, more pastors, more organizations that help them. And I think it's an injustice for us to not recognize that exists and to do something about it. I think that there should be more people and more agencies doing a lot more work to not just promote awareness, not just walk down the street and say, hey, this is an injustice. but actually do something. What are we going to do about it? And for there to be more publicity about it, because I do think that there are great organizations working hard to help these victims, but the media doesn't cover that. And that for me is discouraging, because I think that there's a lot of people that can benefit from seeing that they're not alone and that there is help.
Mm-hmm. Wow. That's a loaded answer. My God. You know, people who experience human trafficking or going through it, those people are like at the top of my prayer list. Like, that's so near and dear to my heart. And, you know, I came out to LA as a missionary over 10 years ago because of kind of what you did, praying for your next step. And God led me to the Dream Center in LA. And I know they were helping rescue people who are dealing with human trafficking. And I've never stopped praying. Like, those are the top. And I'm seeing more people talk about it. It's becoming more broad, and even with sexual health, too, becoming more normalized. But yeah, feeling like you're all by yourself in the struggle is its own sort of abuse. So I love what you're saying, and definitely hope that you do your part. You know, keep showing up and being a light. And you know, it seems like you have a lot of passion about it. So I hope that you would like channel that, you know what I mean, and like in a way where you're inspiring more pastors and more churches, the body of Christ, to really step up and be that help for people. So thank you for sharing your story today, part of your story. Definitely, you know, pray your book gets completed right on time, it's released in the right way, gets to the right hands, gets to the right people. It might be foundational for your organization where you go out and you help people, you know. So I love it. Yeah, make that contagious. And I'm going to do my closing, and then if you have any closing thoughts, please do share it, you know, concerning diversity, anything else in your heart like that. But thank you guys for joining us today on Diversity Chats, where we bridge the gaps of diversity, destroy ignorance before it destroys another life. Thank you, my friend Julie. You're my new friend. You're my friend, even if you don't want to be my friend. I'm calling you friend. Welcome to friendship. Do you have anything else to share, like any closing thoughts? Anything we didn't talk about?
I guess a closing thought is, whoever is watching, just, you know, if you are a Christian, you have a calling, even if you haven't discovered it yet. Just pursue God, and He will meet you where you are, and He will give you guidance. And if you're not a Christian, become one, because it's great. And God will guide you, and He'll give you abundant joy and peace.
That's real. That's good. Amen. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, and I hope you have a great rest of the evening. Have a great weekend. I'll see you around.
All right. See ya. Thanks.